Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Focus on Liberia on the Marketplace, where we talk everything finance, economics. Welcome again. I am your host here today, uh, Saturday at 3 p.m. here in, you know, the U.S. Eastern Standard Time. I think it's about 7 o'clock in Liberia. Today, our topic is the impact of banks in building library economy. Uh, so we have a guest today. Hopefully he's having some technical difficulties. Hopefully he can join us. Uh, uh, but in the meantime, while we wait for him, we will do a little pivot, and until he joins us, and then we will resume that topic again today, later on today. That's if he joins. Again, as usual, we have the usual hosts with me, Larry, Alex, Prince in the studio. Depus should be on his way. Gentlemen, again, it's great to have you back. And again, as I said, we have our topic, but in the meantime, the guest is not on. So we're gonna do a little pivot until he comes on. Hopefully he can come on. But if not, then we will just run with it. But again, great to see you all.
I'll let Alex go real quick. Can you hear me, Gabriel?
Yes, I can hear you clearly. I think Alex
Perfect.
is muted.
Alex, you're on mute.
Yeah, hello, gentlemen. Hello, Larry. It's
Good.
How are
good,
you,
Sounds good.
Chief?
good to see you. It's a little while we didn't see you yet.
I know. Been working on a project. Let's put it that way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I hope
So
I hope your project allows you some flexibility.
It's too early in the program to start down a cantankerous talk.
So, gentlemen, it's always a pleasure being here with you. As I said, we had a topic to talk about, specifically community development from a banking standpoint in Liberia with Emmanuel Jackson. But, Emmanuel is still trying to come on. I think he's having technical difficulties. So, what I want us to do today, I want us to not pounce on the sanction that we I think we talked about it, but I want us to go maybe in depth a little bit and really not just talk about what it means, but maybe we can look at it from the what we think it will translate to, what will happen. If certain decisions are made, what will happen? If certain decisions aren't made, what we think was going to happen. So, but I want us to really go in depth into that report. It's great. I think all of you have some financial background, so I think we can look at it in depth from that perspective as well. So um, if you guys are okay, we can do that. And as I said, it's currently right now open because Emmanuel is not here, but I think that's one thing we should look at. And if you guys have other trending topic that you want us to dive into, we can do that until the guest comes on. Uh, so I will.
Actually, you got two things trending. The sanctions are trending, and also the Millennium Challenge, the latest Millennium Challenge report is also trending. So
Absolutely.
those are things we can just chime on a little bit whilst we wait for our guests to come. So that's yes, we can go with that discussion. Maybe starting from the sanctions.
Okay. So I suppose I'm sure you guys read the report in its entirety. Um, Even if you didn't read it in its entirety, the charges on each individual, like how detailed they were, right? Now, as far as we know currently, they all three individuals were suspended, right? So they're currently in suspension, and there's a lot of people from either the opposition bloc calling for them to be fired, or also there are other people that right now his camp, the camp on the CDC side is quiet, but mostly the demand is coming from the opposition bloc and mostly Liberians in general to have those three people fired. The question becomes, given the granularity, granular how big the impact of the report, right? What do you guys believe the same sentiment that everybody's having, that those guys should be fired? And if not, what do you guys think the president should do?
Gabriel, there's in financial crimes investigation, anti-money laundering, anti-corruption measures, fraud. Uh, there's something we look at. We look at negative news. So, what is against you in terms of things that you may have done? Maybe whether you file in bankruptcy, whether you have issues with anything that has to do with being in a gang or something like that. And then also we look at your criminal history. So whether you've had cases gone through the court system for things that are felonious, felony related thing, it's things that are second degree or misdemeanor, or those not misdemeanor, but things that go to the level of felony. We look at those things. Now, if you're in that process, then if we come to sanction, right? Whether you've been sanctioned or whether you've been involved in corrupt activities, or you've been involved with corporations or companies that have those kind of situation, you can even serve on the board of directors. You can be appointed to the board of directors. You can be favored for certain positions. So it's like having. So in this case, having sanctions is both negative news and you have criminal history, because the sanction, before you're put on a sanction list, like you heard the U.S. ambassador say, the interagency investigation. That interagency investigation includes the FinCEN, the Financial Enforcement Network of the which we call FIU, Financial Intelligence Unit in other countries. There's the FIU involved. That means you are a high risk to the U.S. to using the U.S. currency. Okay, you are high risk to the financial system of the world. And so the OFAC sanction takes a toll. Banks are supposed to implement the OFAC sanction. That's Basel, Convention, and all these anti-money laundering protocols call for that. All right. So it's a deeper thing than what people think.
Larry.
So here's the thing. A good portion of Liberia's budget depends on foreign aid, right?
Absolutely.
So when someone is on a financial sanction, and this is stuff you see in the banking system here in the US, there are systems in place to check to see if someone is on a sanctions list. So, we kind of run, whether the person's trying to buy a property or they're trying to get involved in the financial sector, because banks in the US get hit with a ton of fines for violating, sanctions. Whenever someone is on an SDN list, especially designated nationals list, like how, the guys from Liberia on that list, banks have to be especially careful to make sure that they're not dealing with this person or someone in their family member who may be trying to circumvent the sanctions. If you check the U.S. Department of Justice website, you will see a lot of family members get booked for violating sanctions. Why? Because the person who's on the sanctions list is trying to use a family member to still get into the banking system.
Yep.
The problem in Liberia is the fact that we rely so heavily on foreign aid. You can't have these gentlemen in any shape or form getting involved in any project whatsoever that has America's money in it, because that would be a violation of the sanction. So then you take a step back and you ask yourself, but how is the National Port Authority going to deal with things related to shipping and things like that when LISCA, right, the Liberian Shipping Registry, does a lot of shipping stuff, and it's a U.S.-based company. They're based in Virginia. So how is the Port Authority guy? I mean, you're saying you're suspending him, but he can't get involved in anything shipping related. Any ship coming to the port whatsoever, he can't be involved in that stuff whatsoever. Otherwise, you would be violating the sanctions. And when you violate the sanctions, that's when you feel the consequences. Ambassador McCarthy was kind of specific in saying, look, the sanctions are on individuals, it's not the country. The reason he's saying that is there are economic consequences to sanctions being on a country, but it's not on the country, it's on the individuals right now. And here's the thing. U.S. have been using sanctions for a very long time to influence foreign policies in other countries. I mean, you can go back to the dawn of the U.S. They always use sanctions. The globe mask is something new in terms of it coming out in, I think, 2017. So sometimes I hear people saying, well, the previous administration wasn't sanctioned. Yeah, because it came out in December of 2017. That's why the previous administration wasn't sanctioned, just to be clear. But another important part is if there's a program being run by one of the NGOs in Liberia and someone on this SDN list gets involved in it, they're at risk of being extradited for violating U.S. sanctions. Look, I've said this before on I'm not getting into politics and stuff, but just the banking and financial impact of things. The U.S. have picked up people in Liberia for using taxpayers' resources, especially when it was done in an illegal fashion. So the sanctions influence public policy. When President Biden back in June of 2021 said, look, listen, corruption is now a national security threat. I don't know if people are paying attention to that stuff in Africa, but the U.S. is saying that, look, anyone involved in corruption, you are threatening our national security. People should take a step back and say, ooh, what is this all about? Because U.S. can use certain laws they have on book to grab you no matter where you are. So right now, it can impact things like AGOA, the African Growth and Opportunity Act. We know it's impacting the MCC Compact. It's going to have a reduction in foreign aid to Liberia. It can devastate the Liberian economy. So the president needed to take some serious action. I don't know if the suspension is serious enough, but only time will tell. And I would just look at it from the financial and economic standpoint and not so much from the political standpoint. And I'll swing it to Depu.
Depu, welcome. You kind of joined the conversation late, Liz. I mean, you joined the conversation very late. So I'm not sure if you were in the background. We had a topic that we wanted to talk about, but the guest is having difficulty. And I think from where it was looking at, I think we're going to continue. But I know we talked about this sanction last week, I think or so. What we want to do, we want to look at it as to what is we want to look at it from an in-depth standpoint, what it means, what if certain decisions are taken, what's going to happen. If certain decisions aren't taken, what's going to happen. So I think we just heard Alex and Larry from various perspectives. Larry didn't go into the political aspect because we know that he's kind of restricted in a bit. But you worked in the government. You have a working. You and Alex did, so you guys have a broad knowledge of uh, ideas of what could possibly happen if certain things are done and certain things aren't done. So we would like to hear your take on that.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon and good evening to the people who are listening to us out there. The last time we were discussing the investment climate report, and
Yes.
there were a lot of things stated clearly in the investment climate report, stating that government officials were actually having special interest in businesses, and that itself, we discussed that it has a serious implication on the performance of the economy. Where any investor to read that, they will have serious observation on whether they can trust any system like that to work in there. Now we have reached a level which is our current level 2, stage 2 of Liberia economic crisis. The first thing is the investment climate not being favorable. And the next thing that there is that you have people that you consider to be politically exposed people. And these people are now in the system and now they have been sanctioned. once he has sanctioned, what the message is clearly now is that uh, the individual involvement with any financial institution, it has its own contagion on the economy and the operation of such financial institution. The next thing that there, any family member or relative or friends who's a business partner to them, it also have implication on their financial or business activity because indeed collusion, which is clearly identified in the investment climate report, is being confirmed in the sanction. Therefore, you will have to look at it as serious impact on the economy. And what I said to myself was that why this generation, between you and I, one of the things that I'm still struggling with right now is that we are seeing that the older generation didn't do much and the Civil War came and God provided opportunity for us to prepare ourselves. And we have the opportunity to help and salvage whatever situation that's in the country now, seeing us going contrary to the expectation of the Liberian people. So it's something serious that we've got to look at because it has serious impact on the financial system, besides that, the economy as a whole. And I think banking institutions, like we heard yesterday, and I also spoke with one of the media practitioners in Liberia, FIU had taken some steps to see how best they can block these guys' transaction. It's just small portion of the effect that you're going to see. Like Larry said, even NGO, people who have business interests with these individuals, automatically they become a risk factor in anything they do.
Hmm.
Besides that, if you look at the political side of it and look at the economics, I like for us to be looking at the economic sensitivity because Liberian, the political sensitivity is so high that they compromise their own life. They
Yeah,
compromise their
they do.
interests. Yeah,
That's our
so
problem.
what you see here is that we're looking at the interest of the state in terms of financial transaction. If the government doesn't take action to expel these people or dismiss them, and they still have interest in any public office or any project that has to do with any government, USAID projects, World Bank project, because US government also financing that because they got sharing whatever funding that go. Any partner project that US is also spending, making contribution to, like we have multi-donor partner that is also with the financial PFM law reform funding financing that's there. US government is also contributing. Automatically, you should expect further action from the United States government. So it's better for you to save the state, to let two, three people go,
Right.
than for you to allow the state to be exposed to vulnerability, especially where there's serious hardship, no job, and everything in the economy. So that would be the first few observations I just want to bring.
Yeah. No, thank you. And I think I share the sentiment that all of you guys share as well. I think there's grave consequences either from a political standpoint or even from uh,
So from
organized.
Gabriel, from the standpoint from where Depo start, when you're placed when you're placed on a sanction list, like I tried to say from the beginning, uh, part of the banking protocols and stuff like that, banks and other financial institutions they are required to run a sanction program. That sanction program is saying that when you put on OFAC sanction, for example, as simple as it get, the US is telling you don't use our currency.
Hmm.
That's as simple as it get. And any attempt to use our currency or any attempt for somebody to use our currency, like Depu was saying, they got family members and close associates. Family member could be your spouse, I mean your wife or husband, your children, and to the extent that some country can even include your domestic workers, your driver, your cook, because those are people that could even conduct transactions on your behalf. They can be affected. Your close associate could be people that you're in business with. So what the bank would do, at the minimum, they will put you on a high risk.
Yeah.
You already declare a high risk. So that means you are subject to enhanced due diligence, meaning that any transaction, any money that check writing, deposit money in the bank or wire transfer, money transfer, Western Union, water, those things are checked. They can go a little bit step further by putting a what we call the PND, that is post no debit. That means you cannot withdraw from that account. Money can come into the account, but you cannot withdraw from the account.
Right.
And another step also from the government side, the financial intelligence unit of every country, because um, the issue of anti-money laundering, these protocols is to protect the financial system, the entire world financial system from criminal use. So
Criminal, you mean terrorists and money laundering.
anything that is
Right.
process of crime,
Right.
whether you do corruption, whether you kill somebody, you get money from it, whether you evade taxes, whether you do child trafficking, any crime that you gain money from, they are trying to stop you from benefiting from that money.
Right.
So in this case, with corruption, is corruption is also the process of crime. So you are not supposed to use the US dollars to do your criminal activity. So they're trying to prevent that. So financial institutions are required to take these measures. Now, FIUs are required in countries to ensure that the country is enforcing anti-money laundering protocols.
Hmm.
So to the extent that now you heard that the FIU of Liberia wrote a letter to the bank to free to for these people to freeze their account, it's part of the law in Liberia.
Right.
Once you remember when Basiri Kante's situation came up, it was not the FIU that did the investigation. It was the US.
Hmm.
But the fact that that came up, and because of the cooperation between the Treasury and the Financial Intelligence Unit of Liberia and most financial intelligence unit in the world, they had to take action.
Hmm.
They had to take action on that criminal case. So, in fact, that is an open source case, or the U.S. requested the FIU directly because of cooperation. It can be Ghana, it can be Sierra Leone, because there's exchange of information between countries, FIUs of countries.
Right.
All right. So the FIU is supposed to take that as a case and launch their own investigation to the extent that now they can ask for freeziness in our law. The law says that the FIU head can write, can telephone, or to say, hey, put a PND. But what they're supposed to do officially is to write the court to file for temporary freezing of the account or all your asset to the court. Once that document is lodged and they receive it and stamp it, you can forward that to the banks and say, hey, freeze everything. But you got in our law, you got 7 days for the
Wow.
judge to hear the case and to uphold that temporary freeze or to overturn the freeze.
See, there's a. I want to push you guys back on the direction, Alex. The direction that you're going. I want to push a little further on that, and then we can. So the FIU has that authority. I think the last time we had a topic similar to that, and you talked about that, where sometimes they have some in case they want to push forward, but then they get the people from the higher ups usually end up blocking those cases. Actually, it was mentioned in that report, right? There are where people are money laundering cases that's supposed to be getting investigated. The solicitor general will actually take bribe to have those cases dropped, right? Now, given the and this is why it's sometimes it kind of is there's a big problem. The way the fencing is set up in the US is absolutely different than the way it's set up in other countries, right? Given that this guy is taking out now the solicitor general, who I suppose was the person who will stop some of those cases from going forward, whether those investigations that the FIU are carrying out. Do you think that these people now, well, I mean, these people, the FIU has the full authority now to all those cases they've been trying to push that were getting pushed back, or taking bribe, the solicitor general taking bribe from to get um, you know to get squashed. Do you think now they have their full authority to investigate all of those cases? And given where we are as a currently, where they will see those cases going forward, and we see some persecution coming, happening.
What is it? People will come in, but what they're saying is that with the Solicitor General in particular, and I would try my best not to go into certain things I'm not supposed to go into, but
I
what they say, what it's saying, and I will say some things because this is in the public now. Um, what what this in the case of the Solicitor General and some of the things that I know of is that they when the FIU can investigate, the FIU once the FIU does its work, the FIU is such that the FIU cannot go to court. The FIU is an intelligence is behind the scenes. All right, it's a very powerful organization, but it's unknown. It's behind the scenes, so
mhm.
it facilitates a lot of stuff. Right. You can put the GSC, you can put the RAA, you can put the LACC together. The FIU is more powerful than all those organizations combined. But the FIU sends its work to what we call competent authorities. So if it can send its case on corruption to the LACC to do further investigation and go to court. If the FIU is convinced about a case going directly to prosecution, the FIU can go directly to the Ministry of Justice, right? And the FIU can support the case, right? Provide information. The FIU can also support LACC. The FIU can, support all these organizations to, do their investigation and stuff like that because the FIU have more reach.
Evidence, right? They
It
have the
has
evidence.
internal reach and domestic reach. When I say reach, meaning that they can go to the bank and ask for anything. It also have reached outside of the country through either through ECMO membership or through direct bilateral
Right,
relationship with FIU of other countries.
right,
So in
right.
this case, the Liberia FIU has a bilateral agreement with the U.S. Treasury directly,
So,
right? So the
right.
FIU can share information, and and the Treasury can share information with the FIU as well. So what they were talking about is when the cases, for example, when the FIU director filed papers for a freezing of account, the Solicitor General, who's supposed to ensure that the judge hear that case, he will go behind and solicit stuff to kill that.
Yeah,
That's an
right,
example. For
right.
example, if a case goes to court, for example, the $25 million, $60 million case, when it goes to court, um, they there are ways they can influence the other judge by taking bribes and stuff like that. When FIU gets a case and they're trying to pursue that case, people kill the cases by taking bribes and killing, suppressing those cases. Those are some of the things that they were talking about when it comes to solicitor.
Alex, let me ask Gabriel. I hope you don't mind. Jeff, you don't mind. I want to ask
No, no,
Alex.
no. Go ahead, go ahead.
You
I
mentioned
wanted
something
to
you
hear your
mentioned.
side as well.
You mentioned the two-way communication between the FIU and the U.S. Treasury. Do you think that the U.S. Treasury will share its intelligence on the evidence they've gathered on these individuals? Do you think they will share it with the FIU in Liberia?
Well, to the extent that the FIU Liberia
Was seeking it.
agrees to do an investigation, yes, they can cooperate.
But here's the thing, though. One of the things, and this is what we're seeing with the case against Trump right now, the U.S., if they're going to share information, first of all, it's going to be redacted, right? Because sharing the information would give people a sense of how the U.S. collected that information.
Yep.
And it essentially nullifies their operation. Because we know the U.S. is very good at tapping people's cell phone, very good at picking up people's communication. These are the same guys that tapped Angela Merkel's cell phone, the Chancellor of Germany. So we know they're very good at tapping cell phone, and they don't have to touch your cell phone to tap it. But I'm not sure if they're going to share a lot of intelligence information because the judicial system in Liberia is so weak and it's so compromised. So I think it creates a thing. But I mean, I totally agree with you that they're going to share some information. But I'm not sure how much information they're going to share that the FIU will be able to use in whatever investigation they're doing. I just think the U.S. not going to share that stuff.
Okay, let me, for example, what I said, they will cooperate with you to the extent. All right. For example, they will provide you they take more from you, right? Because they have the sophistication to conceal information. We may not, as in third world countries, or say, for example, in the case of Liberia. But yeah, I'm a little tight on that one. But to the extent that they can point you to direction as to where to go and what information you need. Yes, they can point you to direction, so they can cooperate.
Okay, yeah, that's fair. Okay.
Yeah, that's what I meant. Like, if you go seeking, they will give you what you need. To a certain level, not every. Right. Depo.
Yes, thank you, Ellis.
Let me wait before you
It's
go in there. Say, for example, when we were doing the investigation in the 16 million, you had crew 16 million, 25 million. You had crew that was hired by the U.S. government, and we did exchange information to the extent that it assisted our investigation, and to the extent that they assisted their investigation. Yes, we did exchange information.
But Alex, here's my problem, though. I don't want to be cynical, but here's my problem. Sorry, Depu. Here's my problem. Based on all the investigations and stuff that's been taking place in Liberia, has anyone been prosecuted? I mean, what's the value in sharing this information if nobody's been prosecuted? So what's the value in that?
So why you think?
Let me just come in here just a little bit.
Okay, go ahead.
In as much that we have, that's why you have in some of the bilateral agreement, you got information exchange, pay information exchange. These are basic things that are written. Where the commitment comes in is you go back to this agreement and say, look, you are supposed to provide this information, and we need it. And where we are right now, there have been thorough investigation before they came off the list. On the Liberian side, what is very much important, the burden is now with the government of Liberia. And if you don't believe what the investigation report is and why the sanction was given, was taken, the first thing that there is to say, look, we want to protect. So the investigation will have to be done by the Liberian side and to authenticate whatever information that led to the investigation. And I will tell you this clearly, that the fact that there haven't been any major prosecution or investigation to indict anybody by the FIU. But FIU had been the sole authority to also provide good intelligence in terms of financial transactions. So there's this memorandum of understanding between the both social department and the FIU. FIU does not have the prosecution authority, is not authority to go prosecute. One of the things, one institution that I think now, besides the integrity institution that has to work very seriously as we speak right now, is the National Security Agency. And no matter what they do, it is time now to show that indeed they have the international network and they have the ability to show that indeed to lift the sanction on these people, XYZ have to be done. But in reality, Larry, I can say Ellis is sitting down right there. Where we are right now, our argument should not be about U.S. proving the intensity of what it did. How our major as a country right now, our decision should be how to take some action and build confidence in our partner to be to trust us. So it's not an issue of whether this thing happened or not. That's what I want to say.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. The part that confuses me, that kind of, where I'm confused, is that the the FIU has to give authority to the bank to freeze somebody's assets. That's the part I don't understand here, right? Whereas here, I'll give you a perfect example. When I just started in banking, right, 7 years ago, this guy had a business. What he would do is something simple. What he would do, he will come deposit $9,800 to this branch, goes to another one, put deposit in, and right within the same town, he goes to another branch, deposit another amount, goes just to keep that threshold. When we started picking up on it, what we did, we flagged the account. They started monitoring when we flag it. They started monitoring it. They started monitoring weekly activity. Within 4 weeks, that account was frozen. We didn't have to go to no. We didn't have to say tell no authority to say, hey, y'all come and freeze the account, or people come into it and say, y'all freeze that account. We notified the first you fill out the SAR, right? Suspicious activity report, right? That flags that account. The moment it continues, you get orders to freeze that account. Right. That's the part I don't understand with FIU, where they have to, like, the bank's supposed to be able to pick up on those things and be able to take action themselves, as opposed to getting action from the FIU to say, hey, this is what you need to do now and do that. That's the part that confuses that where I
No,
get confused with the FIU. Right.
no, Gabriel is not the issue of FIU. Realistically, FIU has MOU, has an agreement with the Treasury Department, and besides that, in 2021, when it comes to the issue of money laundering, the Minister of Finance also came to Washington D.C. and also had an agreement with Washington, if you can remember. And they came here and we made a commitment. So the exchange of information in terms of financial transaction is where we have made commitment as a country. So it's a matter of much that when there's information, red flag, you have to follow up. So FIU have no option but to ensure that indeed, based on this agreement, they have to close this account, give instruction to the bank to close it. And the next thing that they have to do now is to go, and investigate all transactions that are within the system, not only with the bank, but with other business partner. And that's what is very much important to do. So, but it's part of our agreement, it's a commitment between two countries.
Right. I understand that part. The part that as I said, where I'm confused is that they, I guess this is a tangent on the banking aspect of it, where they have to get with a FIU to come tell them what to do before they do that, when they're supposed to be picking up some of these things from the beginning. But that's a whole another conversation on the banking aspect of it. Um, like over here, we don't have to wait for the fencing to tell us. You know, we don't have to wait. We act. Like if I suspect you of doing fraudulent activity, first thing I'm doing, I'm filling out a report. You know, the next thing it go that flags your account. You will be walking around doing your normal activity. You have no idea that we're monitoring your account. We're monitoring your deposit. We're monitoring everything that you're doing. Period. We don't have to do like we don't have to go to fencing, right? When it gets escalates within when action need to be taken, we will take action. Another case in point here, when I just started in banking too, and that speak to the incident of these guys. I hear people say, oh, they can use their relatives' account and to current activity. When I just started in banking, right, I was a relationship manager. The branch that I was working in, this kid, Haitian kid, he was the supervisor for the branch. I was just on the business side. Bought a 7 Series BMW. This is a teller. He bought a 7 Series BMW. He will go party to Foxwood. And sometimes some of the customer comes in, they will say, oh man, we saw you last night partying. So it started raising flag. I said, your teller supervisor, where are you getting all that money from? To the point, they said the kid had a black card. Right. Too long. Fast forward 2 months later, $10,000 was missing from the vault. We're in a branch. Imagine working. The back office call us. Hey, every y'all make sure you count everybody too. They counted that money was still missing. They started going each into everybody's account. Hey, give me your account number. They go into everybody's account. You know where they found that money? In his sister's account. He took the money and deposited into his. Within a matter of 2 hours, they whipped him out of that bank branch. They brought him somewhere else. They gave him the option: either you return that $10,000, or we're going to press charges, and you'll never work at another banking institution. The next day, guess what happened? That money appeared right back on the floor. We didn't know how that money got there. So to those people that say that, that you hear them talking, oh, we're gonna, they can use their family members, you're just gonna jeopardize your family member. Like when they freeze your account, it is frozen. And when they're coming after you, they're not just coming after you. There is a spider web that they cast. So I just wanted to say that.
Gabriel, to follow up on that, people who don't understand banking, they don't understand how the government can find out this information. If you don't understand banking, I can tell you this. Someone's going to violate the sanctions. It's inevitable. They would think they're so smart and they think they can circumvent the system, and we live in a digitized world. Not anything you do, you leave a digital footprint. Even if you delete it, somewhere in the back of your system, there's a digital footprint. If you move money out of countries, you use SWIFT, right? The Society for Worldwide Interbank Financial System, you use SWIFT, right? There's a digital footprint. And one of the things, working in the banking sector for so long, we know how to track money. Every transaction has a code on it. I'm not going to mention the guy's name. He worked in one of the Federal Reserve Bank district, and he was telling me what he does. And I said, oh, okay, so you know all about the IMAD, IMAD, and the OMAD. He was like, whoa, how do you know about that? I said, dude, I've been in the banking since 1984. I've been able to trace money around the world. I don't care if you're moving money through the Bundesbank in Germany, over through the Japanese Central Bank, or through China or over in South Africa. We know how to track money. We flag certain countries in Africa because they're at high risk of money laundering. The U.S. is concerned about what's going on in Liberia because not only these 5 individuals are on this sanctions list, but there are 12 other companies that's on the sanctions list in Liberia. Those companies are sanctioned because they have direct support to Hezbollah. If you don't know who Hezbollah is, the U.S. is concerned about Hezbollah because this was one of the reasons why the U.S. kind of dropped the ball when 9/11 took place. They weren't paying close attention. The computer system weren't communicating, but they got all of that fixed. The U.S. is concerned about the movement of money, not just corruption, but the movement of money to fund terrorism. So when you have individuals who are kind of moving money around in a shady kind of way, the U.S. is mainly concerned about it being used to fund terrorism, to fund transnational crime. I can tell you this, because Liberia was so friendly with each other, someone would think they're doing somebody a favor. They're going to violate the sanctions. They're going to get picked up. I mean, it's inevitable. I know it's going to happen. It's inevitable. They're going to violate the sanctions. Another thing real quick, a lot of the lobbying that was done by the government, those contracts are all voidable. Remember now, we have people over here in the US signing lobbying contracts. So any lobbying contract signed by any one of these individuals is voidable. It's not going to be in effect. So those firms that were getting paid $250,000 or $500,000 per year for lobbying, and I mean, I don't want to get into the politics of it, but how do you lobby and end up on a sanction list? That's another show right there by itself. But any of those firms that were lobbying right now, if they're not shaking in their boots to try to void those contracts, and it's going to save the country a lot of money because nothing came of it. But if those lobbying contracts are not canceled, somebody's going to get into deep trouble. Sanctions have an impact on countries. They do. I mean, when you see the world came together and they hit Russia with all these sanctions, it devastated the Russian economy. Russia, for the first time in its history, failed to make its debt payment or its sovereign debt. It tanked their financial rating. So, I mean, this thing is going to have an impact. We need to pay close attention to it because there's going to be some economic, and the economy is struggling. I mean, you had 18 consecutive months of negative economic performance. That is way beyond a recession. 18 consecutive months, the economy didn't grow. It was only the past year it inched up a little bit. But I think right now the president will need to take some more drastic action and let the Americans know that, hey, listen, we're going to clean up our act, and we're going to try to make sure that we get things in order over here in this country. But other than that, I think someone's going to violate this country, violate the sanctions. And this sanction was just, I think it's just a warning shot.
Thank you.
It's a warning shot. Dana Banks spoke about it. Ambassador Linda Greenfield spoke about it. The Ambassador McCarthy did, what would J.J. Roberts say? They were all these little, they were kind of jabbing you, boom, they hit you with one sucker punch. They're coming out with another bigger punch, and this is what people need to pay attention to. Who's going to be on that next list? Mm-hmm. There are consequences to these things, and I think the Liberian people need to pay close attention to it. I pray that the U.S. maintain its commitment to not sanctioning the country and kind of focus on individuals per se. So I just want to kind of mention that people should pay close attention to what's happening. If you don't understand banking, sorry, but somebody's going to get pinged on this thing big time.
Yeah. Now,
in addition to
you guys
this,
want to come on that, but I wanted to follow up on that. But Depo, go ahead.
One of the things
I have a follow-up question deeper into that, but when Depo would land. Go ahead. Depo.
Yes, what I'm trying to say, I'm trying to just back what Larry is talking about. The risks about this whole thing is a Liberian financial institution, the banks that are in the country, only LBDI is a Liberian-owned bank. The rest of it are all foreign-owned banks. So you don't expect this country to risk their relationship with the United States, especially when you have to use, the majority of them have to use New York SWIFT to say they're going to risk their financial transaction because of Liberia. Mm-hmm. The market is too small and tiny to risk their entire investment. So people should think about that. If we have control over our economy, where we control the financial institutions, you can even talk about these things. People talk about, they impose sanctions, other people, they survive before. They're complete two different sanctions. And we need to be very careful with this. That's the point I just want to raise, because LBDI is not even liquid enough to say that if EcoBank happened to withdraw a GT and the rest of the Ghanaian bank, all these banks happen to get up today, what will you do? You don't want to risk your economy because of simple decision making. We need to take it serious. People looking at this thing from a political angle, and I keep talking to some colleagues that, look, let's leave politics. This thing is more dangerous for the country than we think.
Like you said, Jepu, those banks in Africa, they cannot afford to get penalized by the U.S. And Liberia is not just the only place where they're operating. They're operating in other African countries, and they're doing business with their citizens over here in the U.S. They can't afford. ING Bank, the Netherlands bank, they got hit by $1 billion fine for violating our sanctions. This thing, and the banks, they're going to be very careful. Over here, for example, Alex is interested in buying a home in the U.S. There are a system, this company called Accenture, right? Accenture is a big-time high-tech company. There at one time was linked to Arthur Andersen, big-time company. So they have a software. Alex goes to purchase a property. They will run his name through a system called Rex Data. Rex Data would check all of these lists, the sanctions list, and make sure that he is not a specially designated national. We have those systems in place. I'm not sure if a lot of those banks over there in Africa have systems like that, but they got to be very careful, because the U.S. have a way of tracking some of these systems to see, okay, this is how they grabbed Jame, the guy from the Gambia, his wife. They were trying to do something in the U.S. They have been passing money through family members until the U.S. discovered it, and they grabbed her assets, and they grabbed her as well. So I know somebody's going to violate this thing. Why? Because they just think they're so smart. They don't understand you're not smarter than some of the programmers that are sitting over here at the Treasury Department, over at the Federal Reserve Bank, over in the UK. You're not smarter than a lot of those guys. So they're going to mess it up, and you're going to see what's going to happen.
As the saying goes, if you think you're smart, you're just as you're just the dumbest person, you know.
Larry, when you're using the U.S. Currency, you gotta be careful because the U.S. goes to great length to protect its currency and to protect the financial system. That is why the entire world financial people, the group of G7 came together some years ago to form what you call the whole financial crime thing, the international body that governs anti-money laundering is to protect. And then the Gabriel was saying, Gabriel gave an example. The example that Gabriel gave is what we call structuring. Okay, every, every bank, and especially the banks in the U.S. and the advanced world, there are tons of what we call red flags, right? Every bank puts system in the bank that you work with. It has system,
Hmm.
the software system that deals with all these different transactions, whether it's first line of defense, those who actually conduct the transaction, whether it's the second line of defense, those who check the transaction, the back end people who are the anti-money laundering folks as different level, and whether it's the tail line of defense, the auditing. These systems are in place to the extent that what you're talking about, if the bank finds you that you are habitual
Violator. Yeah.
violator, they will de-risk you. They will send a suspicious activity report, but they could close your account by their decision.
Thank you. Yep.
They will tell you
Yep.
that we're closing your account. In my job, I also make recommendation for closure of account if the risk of having a transaction with you is higher than it's once the risk appetite of that it surpasses the risk appetite of that country. Especially, for example, if you have as simple as three, depending on the bank, if you have three suspicious activity reports filed, if you have four or five suspicious activity report filed, the bank can close your account and report you. All right. Of course, leave with the authorities, the FinCEN and other people to conduct that investigation. Because the entity that I work with now, when I call the name, they Larry was saying, $1 billion fine. When FinCEN and the regulators here, the Federal Reserve, the OCC, the Office of the Control of the Currency, when they're fining you, the FDIC, when they're fining you, they fine you in the millions. These entities are hit with almost $1 billion worth of fine by two. Of course, they combine two different, the Fed and the FinCEN fine them, and they have to bring in people to make sure that their anti-money laundering processes work. So what we're talking about is when you narrow down that to Liberia is not in isolation. Most of the banks in Liberia, they are not correspondent bank by themselves. When they are transferring money or when they are conducting transactions, they have to pass it through other intermediaries, the correspondent banks, right? So these things are tracked. Whether you let your sister send it, whether you let your brother send it, these things are tracked. And especially once you are already, that's why when you're on the OFAC list, you are put on the minimum to be put on high alert, if I may put it that way, high risk. That means anything. By this time, your close associates, your family, your immediate relative are already linked to you.
It's a web.
So when the USA we did an interagency investigation, that meaning the FinCEN was involved, the FBI was involved. They collected tons and tons of information, and this investigation is not just in 1 month time. These things take some time, over a 3, 4, 5 years period. Documentations are collected. So when you are put on a sanction list, it's like you're already, a verdict has already been run against you. And if you have property in the states, if your close relative have property in the state, those things are already confiscated. Bank accounts, real property like house, whatever, and you have it in different countries. And I can tell you that some of the countries, other countries, whether it's Guinea, whether it's Sierra Leone, whether it's Ghana, they're already taking action. The banks in those countries are already taking action.
Yep.
So Liberia has no choice but to take action on these things because it also has a reputational damage on the country. And the
Yeah.
country to feel all these different anti-money laundering protocols and stuff like that, a failure to take action. That is why I think it was better for the country for us to let these people go rather than playing politics with it.
Yeah. Thank you. I think I have another question on to regarding the the consequence. I think Larry alluded to some of it, and I think Depu did as well. Uh, the follow-up question that I have that I want us to talk about after, I want us to take a quick break after that, and then we have some comments as well, is the consequence of that. You know, if we don't take actions, could that precipitate into the U.S., because they have interest into, as Larry talked about earlier, they have a lot of money into that country. Most of, the money that we use to survive in our country is, US funded, most of the projects. If we don't take actions on this sanction, right? When I mean action, firing these people, or if, as Larry pointed out, I think you also pointed out, if somebody violate this sanction, what is the next chess piece that the US could be moving? Could that even result into, either more lists coming out, or do you guys think it could lead into the country being sanctioned? You know, but that's the question that I want us to talk about after we take a quick break. Ladies and gentlemen, again, welcome to Focus on Liberia. If you haven't been with us, we are on the hour mark here, and somebody's it's somebody's you know Deborah, I think it's you. We're on the hour market, and we've been talking about the sanction uh, report that came out. We dove, you know, deep into it, and I think from what we've heard so far, I think every one of us here have the same, we're sharing the same sentiment. But I think what we feel here, if it doesn't translate into, action being taken, there could be grave consequences. And I don't think we maybe we here do understand that, but I don't think the people in politics, in government, do understand the consequences of what just happened to them. I don't think they understand the magnitude of what it means, and what what they need to do in order to mitigate some of the further impact to the country. So but again, I have Alex, Larry, Depu here with me. Gentlemen, as I said earlier, we we know what happened. We talked about the impact, even into whether from the economics aspect of it, the financial, how, certain things happen. The biggest question that I think need to be addressed, and I think Depu kept talking about that, is not just from an economic standpoint, right? But if those three guys don't get fired, or if they're trying to play smart, as Larry said, they want to say, hey, my brother can, do banking for me, or my brother can, or my sister or family member can do certain things for me, and they end up violating part of that sanction. The question that I want to have here, I want to pose to you guys: what do you think the next chess piece that the US is going to have? You know, what do you think the next action is going to be? Is it going to be further sanction, or, as they alluded to, putting out more lists, or do you think they're going to take a broader uh, action that, make shockers, which is, maybe they might go as far as sanctioning the country, and that might do I don't want to think that, kind of an alarmist standpoint, but I think we have to do something, and if we don't do something, something big is going to happen. So that's the question that I want to pose to you guys. If we don't do anything right now, as we are, what do you think the US is going to do? given that they have money in our country, they have interest in our country. Like Larry, you've been pointing out, they've been giving us signal upon signal, that we never even pay attention to up until the hammer, coming down. And if we don't take our time to take that hammer off our back, an axe could be coming down further down from that pipeline as well. But what do you think could happen?
I think the U.S. can end up doing three things. The U.S. have been using sanctions as a way to influence policies in countries. We have a situation where we have 2 senators who are currently sanctions, and we have 3 members of the executive that are sanctions. And we have a total of 12 companies and entities in the country that are on the SDN list. So you have 5 people right now that are on the Globe Max sanctions list, and 12 entities that are, on the SDN list for one reason or another, relation to either Iran sanctions or Hezbollah sanctions. So the things the U.S. can do, they can reduce the level of foreign aid to your country. And because we know that a good portion of the budget relies on foreign aid, a good portion of the resources we get in our country relies on foreign aid, it's going to have a downstream impact to the people. Remember now, this is a budget that was increased recently from around 785 million to, I think, it went up to 820 million. What is it now? At 785, it wasn't even realistic. Now it's over 800, and then you have sanctions hovering over you to kind of, put a knee on your neck, so to speak. So it becomes even more important to pay close attention to the sanctions, because I'm not sure how you're going to raise that budget. They can reduce the level of foreign direct investments. We know the level of foreign direct investments in the country has been reducing over a period of time. Recently, the U.S. took executives from major companies here in the U.S. They went down to South Africa. These guys managed over $1 billion in investment funds, retirement pension funds. They went down to South Africa to take a look at opportunities to invest this retirement money, because there's not a whole lot of things in the U.S. to invest in. So a lot of these companies here in the U.S. are looking at emerging markets to put money in there, to have a higher return on their investment. So investments went down to South Africa. Botswana is going to benefit from that as well because of its proximity to South Africa. So the U.S. can say something really, really negative, considering what they wrote the last time about foreign direct investment wasn't bad enough. They can really discourage foreign direct investments to your country. The fact that you're on SDN list and what the U.S. wrote on that list would discourage any company from going down there to do business, because the U.S. was saying you have to pay bribes in order to operate. They even made a statement that said it is more beneficial for you to operate illegally than for you to operate legally in this environment. It's going to discourage a lot of companies from doing business in there, because you may not be doing anything illegal, but the fact that you're in that environment and you're surviving or profiting, the U.S. would think that you're doing something illegal.
Exactly.
So that whole perception is another thing that would impact. So reduction in foreign investment, reduction in the amount of aid you're getting. And then the third thing you have to be careful with now is the U.S. have a very, they're not sometimes on the up and up on some of the underhanded things they tend to do when they want to really disrupt things in your country, right? They're very good at kind of maneuvering things to get things done. You can see some massive protests taking place in the country. And it will not just be because maybe someone influenced it. It will be because the people now are feeling the pinch of what the U.S. have done in terms of pulling back its foreign aid, pulling back its investments and all that stuff. They will feel their pinch. Right now, they should be feeling their pinch, but that's going to lead to a lot of protest. And it's not going to be anything the opposition is doing. It's going to be the things that the rulers right now are doing to themselves. That's going to come back and bite them.
Yeah.
So these are some of the things that you can expect to happen, if you don't take actions on it. The penalties, reduction in aid, and, the threat of protests coming from the general public as a whole, whether your supporters, opposition supporters, they're all going to come together and say, look, we're feeling the pinch. Let's do something about it. So these are some of the things that can potentially happen, and people need to pay close attention to it, because you take a look around the world. Sanctions have been very successful in changing public policies.
Larry, or not Larry, Alex or Depu. Alex, I want you to come in first. Depu, I have a quite broader, maybe a bigger question for you, but I want you to answer that question as well. Then maybe you can take that. But Alex,
I think Larry spoke well, and he spoke well because and then let me just simplify the last portion that he talked about, that sometimes in addition to the pulling back on the aid to the country or
mhm,
limiting, they will still give you money, but the amount of aid to your country will reduce, and then foreign direct investment, which I don't know if we have any new ones in the last 5 years, but their action also is to make something happen, to wake people up. All right. So when you hear the word seize the moment, right?
mhm,
So it is to send something happenings in a direction to, or to influence certain action, right? But on the other side, to talk about the impact and stuff like that to the country, like I said, it poses a reputational damage to the country, that key officials of the country have been on the sanction list. You can't have somebody who is on your bank's board, the place you work, on the board of director who is on the sanction. No, they will drop you, because that's too much to deal with. That you have somebody who is a criminal, or who is on the sanction list, who has negative news and things like that. You can't. So if somebody as close as the chief of staff to the president, that means in a subtle way is that the president is involved. Somebody who, and then mind you too now, they also didn't just say sanction, they also say visa restriction. You can use our money, especially through the formal system, and you can't come to our country, right?
right.
So imagine additional sanction coming on additional officials. Whether you suspend them, whether you fire them, they can interact with the US currency. They can't travel to the US. There's this thing hanging over them.
Mm,
They sanctions have been, even individual sanctions, have been very effective in paralyzing people.
mm. Funny
People,
Sherman example.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
different countries, serious gurus, things that happen to them.
Mhm,
Today we're talking about in our own country. We're talking about, I don't know how true the images I see, but what I do know, Vanny Sherman,
yeah.
he literally his law firm is literally breaking down, because he had all these different contracts with all these American companies,
Terrorist organization.
or
Right.
companies that were administering American funds. Because what happened was that the reason why the sanction is because the funds that we're talking about came from American taxpayer,
Yep.
an American company using taxpayers' money.
Right.
So he lost all those contracts.
Yeah.
So obviously, his law firm cannot function without those contracts.
Yeah.
So it impacted him. Have you heard him travel?
No, he's done.
Have you
He's
heard Prince
he,
Johnson travel?
he's done. They're done.
So it
I
has an impact. You can use
yeah.
the US dollars freely. It's like, just imagine this: they suspend your driver license.
Mm,
You can drive now. You have your wife to take you, your son got to take you any places. Just imagine you you have something on you didn't pay your overdraft fee, and the
mm,
bank has to close your account. Because the bank closed your one account, you can open your account anywhere else.
exactly.
And imagine you have to take your paycheck to the the check cashing area every time, and they got to take that fee. You
Take
can
fees.
operate that freely. All right.
Uh, uh, a good example that I like to give people when I'm talking about this sanction is, if you guys heard about the Mauritius cable that came out
Mhm.
about companies in Africa that help organization, other company evade taxes and kind of takes away money from Africa. And it also exposed a lot of corrupt leaders. Kenyan president was on there, like many African president were on there. But the one that stuck out to me was Isabel dos Santos. the daughter of the former president of Uganda.
Okay. Yeah.
The woman became a billionaire by taking the country oil money. Her and her husband, they have companies like any industry you think about. They have companies in those industry to the point she became probably the wealthiest uh, woman in Africa, right? When that report came out, the Mauritius cable, first major banks like the Deutsche Bank, the JP Morgan, the Chase, right? They some of them caught on to that they started questioning where she was getting her money from. Some of them stopped doing business with her, right? The only bank that never that I didn't stop, and they right now they I think they're undergoing sanction as well. Is Deutsche Bank. They put sanction on the lady. You know what she did? She took some of that money, went and bought a bank in Portugal to gain access to the banking sector because they shut her out of it, right? Guess what? They went after that again. They froze all of that account, all of her account. This is a billionaire. I'm talking about somebody who's worth over a billion. To the point right now you can't hear anything about her. So what more about those pocket change thieves that we have over there that 4 million and 5 million that they're running around with. So those sanctions, when they put sanction on you, you when I mean you are finished. Like you're done. It's just a matter of time before you see yourself deteriorating financially or shut out of the system. So I just wanted to put that out there. Depu.
Thank you. The problem with Liberians is that we tend to overlook anything that has to do with data, and because many people listen to radio, they don't check and verify data and analyze it. Without me going to the Minister of State, one of the areas that if the president doesn't take action that will affect the economy immediately is a free port.
Mm.
Uh, in fact, that's a gateway to the economy in the first place. So if they impose sanction on the managing director of the port, APN terminal will definitely have to check its status to see how do we do business with this man. That means that all other issue regarding agreement between Liberian government, APN terminal, you have to review it until this guy is taken away from there. So you see that these are some of the points that I want for Liberians to listen to and
Yeah.
to see, to observe and say, look, is this just something that we're overlooking? The man in position, he no longer qualified to interact with the major investor and the major entry point to our economy. So it's important for the president to just look at these things and say, what's the implication? These are some of the implications besides the financial, institution in the country to say they closing their account. If you don't dismiss these guys and you keep them in this position, the first major impact we feel will be from the free port. Reduction in revenue automatically. You're not gonna be wasting your time and say, oh, let's keep him there. But Gilbert Jr. is not gonna be legal to change his title. So it is about time that major action be taken by the president. In addition to the companies that were sanctioned operating with Liberia, we have to look at potential threat of the entire region were we to allow the company to operate. We have not taken action. That's, as I said, data. Have we checked our data requirement analysis and say, look, how are these companies operating in the sub-region and what's the implication for the economy if they're going to go next step? So I don't have uh, data right now on the company which other area they're operating, but I can remember the list came out clearly and I went through that this company has connection with Syrian individuals and other things. So Why are we not analyzing this to look at the implication?
Mm,
I will see tonight that we have, as we sit here on this FOL, it's better for us to also do some policy brief in advance because
mm,
it is very much important. I know many people will see it thinking, oh, anything you say is, oh, opposition, but sometimes technical people assist in making decisions for the country.
mm.
Besides the port issue that we're talking about today, another risk that there is that the Minister of State is the foot soldier for the president. So the president should get a signal that indirectly he himself is being sanctioned.
I didn't want to
But
say
you
it.
know what's funny, Depu, Gabriel, before you
Depu,
come in, you know
Why
what's
you
funny,
are
Depu?
why are
you
you
took a
afraid?
shot. You took a shot at somebody. I didn't want to say it. I think all of us kind of stay out of that limelight. But
You
go
guys
ahead,
are
put your head
afraid
in
to
there.
say it. Okay.
Go right ahead.
I want to say this real quick. This is so weird. I mean, it's so bizarre what's going on. So what Depu said, repeat what Depu said, right? You have somebody, you have the Minister of State who's a foot soldier for the president, right? Minister of State who can travel to the U.S., right? Then you have a foreign minister who is meant to put out the country's policies on how it interact with other countries who also cannot travel to the U.S. Well, he claims that he's not restricted from traveling to the U.S. He said that only reason he hasn't traveled to the U.S. because he hasn't applied for a visa. So that's a kind of roundabout way of saying, hey, I'm not sanctioned. I can't, but I don't apply for visa. So, which is absolute nonsense. Remember a couple of months ago, I mentioned the former finance minister from Mozambique,
Hmm.
the guy who is still sitting in prison somewhere in South Africa because the U.S. is waiting to extradite him for money laundering. I mean, look, the U.S. has this policy where they will grab you no matter where you sit for violating any of the laws. Aren't they grabbing the president who just left office from, what is it, Ecuador, one of these countries then? His brother right now is in prison over here in the U.S. He was a senator in this Latin American country. Now they're going to grab the president for violating some corruption thing and drug running thing he was doing in our country. They're going to grab him as well. I can see someone family related think they're so slick violating these sanctions, and someone's going to get in some serious mess over it. You cannot move money from Africa to the US without leaving a digital footprint. You're going to get caught, right? So I'm mainly concerned right now, okay, how do we move forward? How do we protect the ordinary Liberians from being impacted as a whole from these specially designated nationals who are sanctions on this globe mag? That's the key thing. How do we protect the country as a whole from this negative thing of being sanctioned, right? I think that's something to look at.
Depu,
Larry, you're trying to force things from my mouth here. What you just said, when I keep talking about reputational damage and other stuff, country-specific transaction, like you try to say, banks, because of the inaction of the government, and because the fact that you have 3 key officials who are on sanction list, Liberia as a country has already been flagged or have started to be flagged in a lot of these correspondent banking transactions because of the heightened risk that the possibility of these people and their associates or their family member will transact. So transactions from Liberia now will be subject to extra scrutiny, not just these individuals alone. Okay, so certain bank will already put it in their system, and the system works such that once they put that red flag there, anytime you, for example, they say any transaction, the IT people will go there, any transaction from Liberia, bam. So any transaction from Liberia could be subject to and Liberia went through that stuff before, a few years ago. All right, it's the implementation of the FIU, the anti-money laundering system, and some of the work that we did that kind of remove that stuff on Liberia. So anytime you have a country which is a high risk country or a medium risk country, transaction in and out of that country subject to, and Gabriel know what I'm talking about,
Mhm.
are subject to certain scrutiny. So this could cause Liberia transaction to and fro Liberia by some bank. Some bank could do it. It may not be all the banks. It may not be an instruction to every bank to say do it, but some bank may just want to reduce their risk,
Yeah.
by
Let me
doing that.
Yeah, let me say something real quick. And Depo, I want you to further on that statement you made. I think you open a Pandora box, and then we can go to I think what Larry talked about in terms of how do we mitigate the impact to the everyday Liberian.
But Gabriel,
So
somebody made a comment here that I think that comment was referring to the guest that should have come on, because the person said they won't take loan from the bank to open certain business, and he wanted to really hear from your guest. I think that's what the comment meant. They said somebody, yeah.
okay. Um, all right. Let me say this now. So on what you just said, Alex. So when you're coming into the banking, you have these like the first experiences that happen to you, they kind of stick with you. The same bank that I started with before. I would just say this in general. There's a certain part of New York when you go there, if you have a card from that bank, most bank, if you go to a certain part of New York, we block that account. You can't make any debit purchase on that. You know why? Because there's a propensity that when any ATM you go to, right? Like you're swiping your card, there will be like those people that can steal your card numbers, right? They have those system there. So the moment you travel within that area, right? Whether you notify or not, the moment you try swiping your card within that vicinity of New York, I'm not going to say the part of New York, it gets denied, right? That goes to the same thing what you were saying, right? If a country if somebody is sanctioned in our country, it indirectly impacts the country as well. It indirectly impacts the country. But Depu, you said something here that
But
I
but
think,
but but Gabriel, it's even in, like you're saying. Let me expand on that. Even within
right?
based on what I said, even within the U.S., there are jurisdictions within the U.S. that are high risk. Florida,
Yep,
for example, because
that's
of the kind of
yeah,
transaction.
yep,
So
yep.
when we're doing our work, any transaction from Florida, it's we give it high light. We
I,
we, we perform certain any transaction from
I
Moldova,
didn't want to say,
any transaction from
but go
Iraq,
ahead.
any
Right.
transaction from certain island. So
Yep.
these, if you look at work, I mean, country check.
Yep.
You know, these are some of the things we check. You check all these places and see what you check news and see what has happened to this country. Immediately you see that negative news on the country, or three officials of that country are subject to offer sanction. Straight ahead, as an
Mm,
investigation, you
mm.
you, you start looking, you start taking a deeper dive, even if it's Larry that sent the money that had nothing to do with it.
Defu, you said something that I don't. Hopefully, I wish we can expand on it. I think we kind of overlook it in this whole sanction thing, right? Where the foot soldier, as you said, of the president has been sanctioned. The impact directly is that we're not seeing that is an indirect sanction on the president himself. How big do you think this is? How big do you think the president should be looking at this? Because I don't think that's something we talk about. We just say, oh, the Miguel, the sanction, Tuawe, the other guy from uh, the port, right? But sanctioning the minister of state, I think that's something you pointed out. That is an indirect sanction on this president. But I don't think that's something we look at. We just look at, we look at it from a bigger level, but we're not looking at it of how that could impact the president himself. Would you like to expand on that, or did you just bring that up and just want to leave it as is?
We're just trying to say that there's a message, in diplomacy. Sometimes you say what statement not given is what you also got to look at, because the fact that there is that as a minister of state who is responsible for the president transaction and almost do all the movement, and now that he's gone under sanction, it's important for the president to take immediate action and replace him. But like that, I think that's the leadership they're looking for. The United States will expect him to do in terms of the way forward. Realistically, to say ordinarily in the Liberian way, say your office ball is being blocked, is put under sanction, not to move anywhere. So they want you yourself to do what the office ball was doing, and the president cannot do that. So he needs to replace him. That's the best way I would put it. If he doesn't know that this decision is really a decision that will affect his movement. The next thing that I think in terms of the way forward is that people observe that there haven't been any reshuffle in his government for the past 5 years, and things keep happening, and many red flags been given, information been given, special meeting been held, no decision. Meaning now that look, we have reached the end of our patience. That's the message you are saying there. That we have reached the end of our patience, so we can no longer go beyond this point. So besides the Minister of State been taken blocked from movement, I've also mentioned the Freeport. So the guy who is at the Freeport is a man who takes care of the economy that we can't deal with. So the president should actually see it now as a message that look, something is wrong, then I need to act as quickly as possible. It shouldn't be Liberian people acting. And let me just say this: our service to the state, I always say, once you are asked to serve in government, you become a peculiar person. And I always tell myself, in fact, I used to joke, I didn't want to serve in government because there are certain things that you would do is not part of government policy, and your personal principle might come in class. But the reality that there is that to have been chosen among 5.1 million human beings to serve in any capacity, whether assistant minister, deputy minister, whatever thing, you are set aside as a special person. So your performance, it should be something that is not for your own interest, it's for the interest of the state.
Agree that in agree letter.
Yes, I agree. So where we
I agree. Yeah, go ahead, Depu. I'm sorry.
So where we are now, I want the president to know that the country is far more important than any individual. So he needs to look for special and peculiar people who will have the country at heart to change the tide around. Other than that, they clearly show that, look, we can't deal with these people, and if we can't deal with this when I pull you one, then we will not deal with you. That's a message. It doesn't go. So I'll stop right here. Larry, go ahead.
Larry, you want to come in? So
to piggyback on what Depu was saying, LISCA, the Liberian Shipping Registry, sends anywhere between $60 million to $120 million per year, right? They make, well, I'll stand corrected. They make between $60 to $120 million per year. I mean, they send maybe around anywhere from 20 to 30 million of that money to Liberia, but they still send a good bit of money to Liberia.
Right.
LISCA does not, in fact, LISCA has roughly 9 businesses that they have registered that's violated the Iran sanctions list. It's on the Department of Justice website, so you don't have to believe it. You can go there and take a look at it. LISCA does the ship registry for Liberia, right? Why is that important? LISCA is doing its best. LISCA has about 3 lobbyists working right now, or 3 contracts with lobbyists working in DC. They're trying their best to protect.
They got lobbyists too.
Every company, major company do.
Yeah, right. And they're doing that because they're in the shipping business. If you're moving goods around, there's that risk.
A joke there.
Yeah, you can violate. There's always a risk you can violate either the Iran sanctions, the Venezuela sanctions, the Russian sanctions. They're concerned about that. So there's no way, shape, or form they'll be willing to work with a guy who is suspended right now over at the port, because it creates an additional risk of. And you know, the biggest thing the U.S. will do is to fine these companies. They will fine you millions and millions and millions of dollars, and these guys don't want to get fined. So they will find some way to influence to make sure, hey, this person over here poses a present danger right now, and we need to get rid of that person. So I can see, the poor guy being really, really gotten rid of real fast because of the risk it poses to Liska. The other thing is the financial sector is so important. No economy, no country, in fact, has developed without having a strong financial sector. I said that one time. Some top minister guy came saying, "Oh, that's not true." I don't know how long he's working banking, but he really didn't understand what I was discussing. But you can't grow your economy if you don't find a way to take money from people who are saving it, meaning people who are putting it in the bank, and then transferring that money to people who are willing to borrow it to do some investments. That's what makes an economy grow. If you grow your economy, and then I think my good friend Lester Tenney said, well, Larry, we can take a look at the 60s, how Liberia had a very high GDP. But that was an anomaly, right? Because the GDP didn't meet up to the development in the country.
Growth without development.
It wasn't really growth. They were just kind of selling their resources like what we're doing right now. We're a renting nation. We rent everything. Even the fish in the sea, we're renting it to other countries, which is nonsense. But we have to the banks were going to be very concerned, very scared. Actions will need to be taken right away because the banks stand a very big risk of being fined or sanctioned by the U.S. So they're going to be very careful with that. Liska is going to be very concerned about dealing with somebody who is now in SDN. We got to be very careful of that. But here's what I want to leave on the table for you guys. Who's next? Who do you think the U.S. is going to hit next as being sanctioned? Because the U.S. now had hit you with a couple of jabs. The next one is going to be a punch. And it's going to hit you so hard that you have to take some serious action. So who do you think is going to be next? It's a rhetorical question. Please don't answer it and put me in trouble. I just wanted to put that out there for the people watching to just kind of say, okay, who's going to be next on this list? Let's pay close attention to this stuff.
Larry.
Yeah, go ahead, Alex.
In the U.S., it's the corresponding banks that will be careful. It's the corresponding bank. If the banks in Liberia don't take actions, it's the corresponding bank. The bank
that is correct. People need to understand what a corresponding bank is.
The money because if, for example, you go to LBDI, you say you want to send money by wire transfer or by other means, LBDI does not send the money directly to you. LBDI have to route that money through another bank in the US. Maybe sometimes they'll route it to another bank in Nigeria. So if it's EcoBank will route it through their correspondent bank in Nigeria. That would then route it to their correspondent bank in England or in America or somewhere. It's those correspondent bank, the bank through which those money pass. No bank in Liberia is a correspondent bank. The only bank that come close is those ones that have their correspondent bank in other countries like EcoBank or so that have in England they have their correspondent bank there as EcoBank. But no other bank. They have to go through another bank through Lebanon or through America. Those banks will be very careful because they are afraid of regulatory fines. And those regulatory fines come in the millions.
Yeah. All right. So thank you guys. I think let's go. I don't know if we have time to take some comments and then we'll go to the closing. We have a lot here. We're supposed to
I think you can go to the comment and we'll close.
Okay, perfect. I think that's a good idea. This is Albert Cooper. You say you guys just wasted 5 minutes talking about what you are going to talk about. I like this guy.
That was from the beginning, eh?
Yeah. I like him.
In another 1 minute, putting his comment up there to talk about it again.
Thank you. This is Lincoln Abraham. Wow, interesting name. That kangaroo suspension there is not even something that George Weah will be holding on here. Okay. This is Hashim Formula. So, Mr. Carter, please ask Mr. Zool if government positions are money-making place or government positions are placed to improve the lives of its citizens. That was direct to you, sir.
I like that.
I think Hashim follows up again. So I'm seeing President, we are suspended McGill but this is not enough. We want him to do more. I agree with you. I think that's what we're all saying here. This is Fridas. Fridas, who is this person? It sounds suspicious. What about the offshore banks?
Yeah, I think Alex touched on that.
Yeah. And then Joseph Williams, Coley, I'm gonna say he's watching from whatever it is. And Hashim is busy. Said President Weah is not taking this sanction serious that the United States government put his government official oh, that the United States government put this government official, but what he oh, what we talk what he taking serious here is the country tour and to get reelected in 2023. I think that's what he meant. Flomo, what do you guys want him to do? Flomo, I think we said a lot about that. Jefferson Tia, I'm falling from my home in Bonneville Road, Maryland Center, District 12, and the district without a lawmaker. Is that true? This is true. Doesn't have a lawmaker to come to come to come out and speak to the press. I think he's trying to
That's
respond.
response to
Yeah,
Augustus.
respond to Augustus. I don't know if I can go through all of these comments. We have time here. There's one here by Tanu Gibson. It seems like somebody is feeling insecure about their smartness and intellect here. We want to hear good stuff about the banking system in Liberia and how it benefits or hurts development. I agree with
I
you. I
think
don't know.
that was the comment I was talking about. I think he was referring to the way it's structured. I think he was referring to our guest.
Yes. Okay. He said
Let
some
me
of
let me.
us.
Oh, go ahead,
Yeah.
Reed.
Let
I'm
me
sorry,
finish.
buddy.
Let me finish. Then
Yeah.
you answer that. Some of us want to borrow money from Liberian banks to buy a home at a 14 military city or start a community clinic. That is a great comment, Larry. Go for
Yeah,
it.
and you see, this is why I didn't even see his comments, but this is what I was talking about. The key thing is how do you get money from people who are saving it to
Mhm.
people like Tarnu who wants to invest it, build a clinic, and do something like that. This is what grows a country, right? This is you need a banking sector to do that stuff. It is you see the problem in Liberia is the banks are exposed in terms of lending money out because the the percentage of non-performing loans, right? The NPL, when you look at the central bank's website, is very high. It should be, I think, around 10% or so. It's almost around 29, 30%. It's very high. I don't know if the number has changed, but I know it's very high. When you
Mhm.
have in non-performing loans, meaning people who has defaulted on the loan, let's say 60, 90 days or so, because of that, the money the bank has, it comes from people who are already deposited in there. And the banks cannot manufacture money. So it becomes even more difficult to lend money to someone like Tarnu because the bank have been burned. So what has been put in place in places like Ghana, and I think Liberia has something like this. It's called the collateral registry,
Mhm.
right? You go to the central bank website, you can see and read up about collateral registry. So what Tarnu is going to need is some type of collateral to put up to be able to give him that loan. But the funny thing about Liberia is in America, you guys know the deal. If you try to get a mortgage loan, the rate is low because the property is collateral.
Mhm.
But in Liberia, the interest rate on a mortgage is higher than the interest rate on a personal loan.
Wow.
I never understood that,
Yeah, I don't understand that. Yeah.
but
And I don't. And in addition to that, if I may add, there's the biggest one of the biggest problem we have with banks, they're not capitalized, right? So like you talk about the mortgage. If I come borrow, let's say 500,000 from your bank, and you give me a $500,000 loan, you take that contract as the contract to you now. That's supposed to be money. How fast can you recapitalize? How can you sell that on a secondary market to get that money back in your bank to be able to lend it to somebody else? Or do you just sit there and just wait for me to make principal and interest payment and before you can have money to lend to other people, so there's a recapitalization is one of the biggest problem we have. If we are able to recapitalize our banks, I think we can, you know help people like Tanu, in the millions. Yeah. Anybody want to take a stab at it, or I can just go to the next one? Okay. Liberians are so wicked to a point whereby they wish for the downfall of others. I was surprised when I heard a Nigerian speaking about how Liberians are to each other. Oof.
That's nonsense, right? Let's just call it out. It's absolute nonsense. When you're telling people to stop stealing, that means you weaken. You see, this is why the American embassy put a statement out that you have government officials paying what they call conflict entrepreneurs. They're paying people to go out there and say things that just are not true, and people are buying into it. So, I mean, I'm sorry, Margaret, but what you're saying doesn't make any sense. People shouldn't call people out when they're doing wrong. It just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, we have to hold each other accountable. That's Emmanuel Jackson. This is supposed to be our guest, who's was having technical difficulties. He said next move by the U.S. Treasury will be checkmate on gold, on government of Liberia. U.S. dollar withdrawal from its Federal Reserve. Hmm. Do we think that could possibly happen? Where they could put a block on that Federal Reserve that we have, whether we can make any withdrawal from that? This is Margaret again. Margaret Peters. That's a great name, by the way. Carter, you think you know about government? It's supposed to be government better than those who working now. You are a a Titan and sycophant.
Sounds like you
Jesus.
got a fan there.
I don't know if that's
You got a fan, man. You got a fan.
that is I don't want that kind of fan, but
You
she's
must
I
you
think
must send
your
out that message after the show, man.
opinion are welcome.
But
Margaret, thank you for following. Go ahead, Larry. I mean Alex.
no, I said you must send Margaret. I see the profile picture there.
No, Margaret, thank you for following. We appreciate every comment, good or bad.
Yep.
What's going on in Liberia? This is Deputy. This is your brother? No,
No,
no.
no.
All right, William
Oh,
Jala.
it's not. It's not. I don't
He's
know
not
him.
okay. Okay, you guys have the same last name. I figure I was just tempted to ask. The guy on this panel are more knowledgeable and scrupulous than your three corrupt sanctioned government officials. Sometimes some of you just need to shut up and find somewhere to sit.
So William Jala is responding.
He's responding to somebody, right?
He's responding for
So you're a fan.
he's responding to
to,
your
to,
fan.
I figure, right. Jala, thank you. I think you couldn't have said it better, this lady. What are you guys doing to help? Spreading news, talking, gossiping, judging, and creating hatred. Ah, I just want to know your own contribution. Margaret Peters. I will remember that name. Margaret Peters. Sound like Margaret Thatcher. You sound like the Iron Lady. Emmanuel Jackson again, especially the supply chain of shipping container as to do with the current worldwide inflation. Port managers in the world must be corruption free. Bill must go. All right, we're almost done with this, guys, so we can wrap out of here. We have met with the ambassador this morning. What do you guys think was discussed? Do you guys want to take a question? You want to take a stab at it? That's a great statement.
No comment from me.
No.
I would say something bad, so I'm not going to say
Yeah.
anything at all.
But
Larry,
first
I
of
mean,
all, I believe that they wouldn't have they would have given him a hint before the sanction. They probably would not have given him the specifics, but they would have given him a hint. And I just use this opportunity to comment on an article that came on some newspapers saying trying to shift the foreign minister into this stuff that the foreign minister knew, or maybe like for lack of a better statement, he either embedded the U.S. Treasury people or whatever. I mean, I'm sure they would have given a hint to the president. I'm sure they would have given a hint to the foreign minister. I'm sure they
Mhm.
were giving a hint to the FIU director that, hey, this is what is coming down, without giving them the specifics. That's
Yeah.
simple diplomacy that is
Yeah.
coming down. So I don't know why you're writing such an article. I mean, not defending the foreign minister, but I think you're just trying to shift attention,
Yeah.
and play some politics on the foreign minister to shift. It wouldn't change the fact that the U.S. Treasury is giving you sanctions, and they probably might give additional sanctions. It wouldn't change that fact. The
Perfect.
foreign
Yep.
minister himself has his own problem with the U.S.
Mm.
Where they're working with him at.
Double trouble. Double.
Mm.
I think the only comment that someone was asking whether service in government, I just want to say to serve in government, like I said before, it's a peculiar opportunity to serve. So it's not about wealth creation, it's about service to the people.
Hmm.
Regarding this meeting, I think sometimes you need to have a tete a tete. There might have
Tat
been
tat
some
tat.
communication. Yeah,
Hmm.
so that's it. So
Yeah.
And let me go back to somebody was talking about the offshore bank. The offshore bank thing is different from the correspondent bank situation. Offshore bank is like bank in different country, right? So maybe Gabriel is a millionaire, billionaire. He does a lot of business, and he wants to open an account in a country he's not resident, or an individual like Larry with all this money he has, he wants to open an account in different country where he's not resident. So that bank is what we call an offshore bank. So the account he's opening is called offshore account, and those accounts are subject to, and those banks and those accounts are subject to serious scrutiny as well.
Mhm.
Those are some of the banks that those are some of the things that can bring the trouble, where the people can keep their political money, like in Switzerland and all those kind of countries. So they too can be subject to serious scrutiny.
Unless you hire, you know. Stephen Garter. So I think the president decision to suspend those roles is cosmetic and is serious embarrassment to our beloved country. George, we need to go. Enough is enough. Uh-uh. Let's take a step further. Emmanuel Jackson again. We got one more left, guys, and then we'll wrap up. The collateral registry never existed in Liberia after Mel Jones and Salif administration created the the registry. Wow. Yeah, does it still exist? I heard rumors about that, and I don't know if it still
No,
exists,
it's there, but it's not
but they're
as
not using it.
functional. Yeah, it hasn't been as productive as it is in Ghana. So this was a World Bank program that World Bank did a test over in Ghana and I think some other country, and then it was brought over to Liberia as a way to give access to capital by people putting up some physical assets. It's still there with the central bank, but I'm not sure. I don't see any data in terms of how well it's performing. You know, how many people it's servicing and things like that. That's why
Mhm.
going back to what Depu said, we don't have a whole lot of data to show whether a program has been successful or not. So yeah, it's still around.
Yeah, because
Yeah,
I think.
to the extent that, for example, I take a loan on a property in Liberia, and I lost my deed and other stuff. After I paid the loan off to get my deed, that was what.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah,
Up to
I
date, I
think.
didn't get my deed back. I had to go for a different deed from the court.
You got to apply for a new one.
Yeah, I had to go and get a new deed. So
Jesus.
that's collateral. That's a sample of collateral registry. Like,
That
where do you
I
put it?
think that program will not. I think it will be very. In addition to the banking system, it will just like it will open. In addition to being capitalized, it will just open a lot of doors. Like if you work in the banking, you guys work in the most of you guys work in the banks, right? Over here, let's say you apply for a loan, you present like uh, Alexa, you give me a house as collateral. I can go in and register a deed and see who the first person, who's the first bank. If there's a note on that you owe any bank, I will see that note. If there's a second mortgage on that, I will see that. right? And I will be able to decide whether I want to go in third place or have to take out the first and second person to go in the second place. The same thing with business. If you pledge your business assets, whether it's your furniture, your computer, I can go on the Secretary of State website. Any state you're in, the only state where it takes maybe 3 days to get it, it's Delaware. Delaware is they're so old school, right? But any state you're in, you borrow money from anybody, any company, you don't even have to borrow money. Just go on the Secretary of State, go to the what we call UCC, Universal Collateral Code. You can search it. It will show you who that person owe money to, who have access to their assets. So with that, if we have this thing implemented, it will solve a lot of problem. You know, it will solve. When I mean solve a lot of problem, it will solve a lot of problem. But as I said, I heard rumors about it. I didn't know if it's been implemented or not. But that too is Liberia. You know. So, all right, the last comment here. This guy said I just insulted his state. I'm sorry, Delaware. Everybody that work in banking, they know about Delaware in terms of there's few states. Delaware is the worst one. Like if you apply for, let's say, if I want to look up a collateral hold on somebody's business, it is like literally manually. You have to do it manually, and it takes them literally about 3 days before they get back to you. There are certain states in the Midwest too that operate like that.
You brought Percy out of his shell, my man.
I'm not making Florida too is similar to that too.
Don't dwell on Percy.
Percy, sorry.
Percy says something here, right? Percy says something before that. I think 2 comments above that, right after William Jala. And thanks, William Jala.
That
right
one or the one.
No, before that, Percy made a statement. Yeah. So
yes,
right there, Percy. If I was, someone on a stage with a microphone, I would just drop the microphone and walk away because you just nailed it. The lack of secondary financial market is what's killing the growth in Liberia. You see, the banking sector, finance, not only do you need the regulatory arm in finance, but you need financial instruments, the bills, the bonds, the CD, all those financial instruments. You need a way. You see, the reason why the U.S. economy grew so much is because people were able to put up their property as collateral to get loan. No one goes out and buy a house for cash. But if a bank has, let's say, $10 million, and they start lending that money out to everyone to build a home, the bank eventually run out of money. But the fact that the bank is able to put that money back by selling secondary instrument is what make the U.S. economy grow. The Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac purchases about 98% of the loans, the mortgage loans we have out here. That whole recapitalization process of taking your mortgage loan, breaking it down into securities and selling it on Wall Street is what makes the American economy grow. Percy, you nailed it, man. We get a secondary market over there, even a stock market or a way to sell debt instrument, the Liberian economy would take off.
Yeah.
So Percy's on point.
I think we should do a session on that. I will facilitate. I think we should do a special session on that, and that is a great topic. But I think we should take a show on that. But we got a lot of series lined up. But once those are exhausted, I think that brings us to the end of these comments. That brings us to the end of this comment. To answer
Can I
your
make
question,
an announcement?
yes. Huh?
2 quick announcement.
Yeah, go for it.
On September 3rd, we're going to have filmmaker, producer, and director Gerald Barkley. Gerald Barkley is going to be joining us. Gerald Barkley, if you guys don't know him, he was the first. He, in fact, did the video for the Wu-Tang Clan way back before they got started. He's a Liberian filmmaker. He's looking to set up a film industry in Liberia similar to what you find in Nollywood and Bollywood. He wants to set up a film industry in Liberia. So all of the artists and stuff, great opportunity for Liberia. So September 3rd, please join us on the marketplace. And then on September 10th, we're looking to bring retired judge Bill Littlejohn. Bill Littlejohn is a friend of Liberia. Judge Bill Littlejohn will be here September 10th. And he was recently in Benin talking about solar panels. He has some people on board. I know his granddaughter just graduated from the University of Houston, and I believe she's working with a company doing solar panels in Africa. So they're looking to start doing something in Liberia related to solar panels. So if you got a business, something you're interested in talking about, Judge Bill Littlejohn will be here September 10th on the marketplace to talk about opportunities for solar panel in Liberia. So we're trying to bring some other guests to talk about, how to grow the economy, some financial stuff, access to capital. I'm talking to someone right now who's looking to do some micro lending in Liberia, looking to do a home construction and micro lending program in Liberia. I will try to see if I can bring him on maybe next week. But that's just a programming note. So
Yeah.
Mark that down. We'll be here.
Yeah, those would be great discussion, and I think for everyone, I think guys, I think this is
And
it, unless you guys,
we have to try to bring Percy Harris on board. I mean, to
when we
invite
talk
him
about the macro
when we
lending
talk about
part of it,
economics.
economics, I think we should bring him on.
And Josh Walker is happy about the discussion about economics. So
Yeah, I think we should specifically do a session to look at the secondary market and the impact, what the impact it could have on the country.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You see what George Walker's talking about? I mean, there's some risk involved, George, but I'm telling you, you set up that mortgage-backed securities program in Liberia, find a way to recapitalize, find a way to package that stuff and sell it to investors over in the US or even investors in the diaspora. I'm telling you, man, that's what is going to grow the Liberian economy. But it has to be highly regulated. You can't do it in such a corrupt society, because there has to be some regulation. You have to put some mechanism in place in terms of how to. All right, so why am I talking about this? I wrote a paper on it. In fact, I spoke to people at the Development Finance Corporation. Back then, it was called OPEC, the Overseas Partners Development Corp. I have been talking to these guys for years. I wrote something on it. I work in investment banking for almost 30 years. That's why I know about this stuff, right?
Yeah.
And I know the benefits it would be, how impactful it would be to the Liberian economy, but we can't seem to put the right mechanism in place so people don't get burned. That's the risk. So that's why when I talk about it, that's how come I know about it, because I've been working in that field for decades.
Awesome. Any more comments from you guys before we wrap up?
That's it for me. I just want to say thanks to Percy, William, Stephen, George, all these guys, Emmanuel Jackson, my partner in crime, Alex, Depu, and you, Gabe, and Margaret, for being a great fan of Gabe. I love you, Margaret. Just
she put a comment here that I left a comment on here again. She has another comment.
I mean, Margaret, we appreciate your comments, and thanks to everybody too, Larry. Thanks to everybody. Thanks to our listening people and people who are listening afterwards.
Yeah, thanks so much for the time.
Yeah, and for guys, I think you guys heard the announcement. We have few great shows coming up, so you don't want to miss it. Next Saturday, the next few Saturdays coming up. So join us again, same time, 3 o'clock or 7 o'clock if you're in Liberia. I think the time's still the same right now. And we look forward to seeing you. And again, Margaret, this goes to you. All the discussion we're having here, there's one thing that we want to do here to advance the conversation, but also advance ourselves as a people and as a country. There's a song that we like to play here that regardless of what we talk about here, whether you see her as whether we're not talking about the right thing or we are, there's one thing that is common between you and I and everyone on the show, and including the audience, is that we're all Liberians. So we love having you. We want to see you here on every show. Matter of fact, I'll reach out to you. Please do join us. Invite other people to join us too. We don't just want to hear people that tell us what we want to hear. We want to hear people that tell us the other side of the story to allow us to look at to look at things from a different perspective. So this is why we appreciate people like you. So on that note, as we always say, whether you think we're saying what we're supposed to say, you like us or you don't like us, one thing that is true is that we're all Liberians. So we're gonna leave you with that song. Hopefully, I can find it quicker. Guys, see you next Saturday. Ciao.
We all have been